So about 5 years ago, we created an application for the Major League Baseball draft. So we worked with a lot of baseball teams and realized that across all of these teams, they have similar problems with preparing for the draft. So player aggregation, being able to get all their data in one spot and be able to evaluate players, prepare for this draft. Thousands of players go into the draft. So in June of this year, or July of this year, I should say, we have 3 baseball teams that will use this draft app to prepare for the app. Sorry, just need to take a breath.
And for those not familiar, the baseball draft has about 30 rounds, so it's a lot different than the other draft.
Yeah, this year we'll have 20 rounds. 20 rounds, and each team will evaluate about 1,000 players. So what we did with this is allow the teams to aggregate all their data. And so what we built eventually was a data mining tool for them to be able to say who's the best available, who's for the, based on what we have, who should we be looking to target. Most of these tools were built to help people with backgrounds in software, right? So each team has a group of analysts that run these drafts, so they're able to say, I want to find this, or I want to find this, or I want to find this and this. So grouping and writing software for them to make their lives easier. We found this to be very helpful for the analysts, but not very helpful for the scouts, right? So when you're a scout in the room, you're the people who have seen the players, you have the better feel of the players, but the software that we built is, it's geared towards the analysts. So the idea that we had here was to kind of help out the scouts to be able to participate in the draft a little better, right? So if you don't know how to write, queries and structured query language to be able to figure out who these players are, how can we best suit this? And so what we decided to use was to put some AI into this application. So we loaded up all their scouting data. So we've taken all the different scout reports that get put on a player in a year, and we loaded it into a large language model and started to train it on different fields that are in this data set to allow natural language to have a conversation with, to be able to say, hey, who should we be selecting? What's available to us? Why one player over the other? And so what we came up with is a chat utility to have that happen. So after we loaded in this data, we basically said, hey, what can you do for us, right? Now that you're here, what can you do? Which this was an untrained, we basically just passed the data in and asked this question. We got back. You can talk about player stats and compare player stats, all the different things that we have, which we were pretty impressed with this. Right? Well, this without a lot of training at all, we were able to get a user to say, now I know what I can ask and what I can't ask, basically, just by loading up a bunch of data into the system. So then we kind of trigger a little forward here. And so this is a real life use case for what somebody would say. So OFP in the baseball world is overall future potential. So if you're seeing a 16-year-old kid and you want to figure out how good is he going to be a Major League Baseball player, that's the job of Major League Scout. So we have Fritzy Sabi, these are all obviously not real names, but he has the highest of 60. So tell me more about him, right? So this is just data that's in the application, right? So that they were able to, ChatGPT was able to pull all this data out and say, here's a summary of this player. And then we're able to narrow down and say, hey, I don't want this one. Who else is there, right? And so I said, I'll give you the next 3. And so the query was saying, the 1B, 2B, or 3B, right? That is a natural conversation that a scout can have that would take a lot of figuring out in a data mining tool to say, these are really OR queries, right? But if they didn't know that, they wouldn't be able to get the results they're looking for. But they know how to say, hey, I just want to know, I'm looking for a first baseman, second baseman, third baseman. Who should I be looking at based on who's available here? So this is a very real life use case that I think is going to be very helpful to our scouts. We have built in also actions in here. So if these are all players that are ranked, so we want to say, okay, well, what are the rankings of these players? One player is ranked at 5th. Well, can you rank it to 2nd? And it will automatically kick off the action and move that player from 5th to 2nd. So just building this tool to allow our scouts to be able to have conversations with the software versus having to actually use the software, making their lives a little bit easier to be able to interact with the software. We also, not listed here, I have a meeting this afternoon. We work with another company, Athletes Unlimited. they are a collection of women's sports leagues. They have basketball, softball, volleyball, lacrosse, and so they're a unique scoring system that are not like any other sport, really. And so we're going to start talking to them about building an AI for predicting and generating their leaderboard. So they have this leaderboard concept. So there's a bunch of different use cases within our sports world that we're looking at, but I think it's something that we should, I think it's going to be helpful going forward and into the future of AI. I'll turn over to Nick on this here.
Yeah, so we're also, just to follow up what he was talking about with the baseball stuff and any of our sports clients, there's a large part of what we do is advanced search for them to find assets, like we'll call them players, but really it's finding assets, it's how quickly they can find them, how easily it is for them to find them, and from a non-technical view, right? Scouts, like you said, they're not usually technical people, but the data set is gigantic for these guys to see, whether they're taking them off the street or whatever. So there is not a client that we don't have right now that hasn't approached us about putting this into their application. So we expect that we talk about the draft app because it's ours, but each one of our clients, there's not a meeting that we're going to right now that their technology guys are like, how am I going to make it easier for my scouts to go find these guys that they need right off the top? So that's something. But and I'll say, like, I'll move into, that's our sports side, but many of the same things apply to us on the other jobs that we do. So currently right now we're working for Ranpak. Ranpak is a packaging company, right? So if you get a delivery, you get the boxes, you get the air bubbles in there, that kind of stuff. That's a company that's what they do. So they'll set up packing for different types of companies, IKEA, Amazon, all of that, right? So they approached us because they have what's called a data crunch packing tool, right? What it does is it provides an analysis to potential clients so that they can figure out what the best packaging, what the size of the box is, what the, how quickly, what's the best way to put a pallet together. It's actually something that they had for a couple of years, has great logic behind it, but the issue was it was not very user-friendly. So this actually is a Salesforce enablement tool. So basically what they do is they're trying to set themselves above, and they're trying to realize, like, okay, look, we're not just telling you, like, hey, this is what you should buy from us, but here's the machines you should buy based upon what your output and what your throughput is. So currently we're in a design phase for a web-based application for them. We've just started to kick this around. The idea is they want to analyze customer shipping workflow and provide recommendations to maximize pallet organization for more efficient shipping and minimize open air shipping. I know it's kind of cool because you realize, like, oh, this is, it seems pretty basic, but if you're shipping, you get a delivery, you guys get it all for Amazon or whatever it is, and you realize if the box is only half full, I've got to ship 4 more times, right? For a company, it's not very effective, and so what they're doing is, instead of saying, hey, this is what you need, they're like, look, this is how we can make sure every box you sent is full, we're going to return, you have a better ROI. Those are all things that companies are doing, right? The idea is we want to let everybody know the idea of this artificial intelligence is that, not that it can just do really cool things, right? But it provides actionable analysis and insights, and that's what we're trying to do for this client, Ranpak. Right? They're really using this, and this is why it's become so, a high priority for them. Is for us, it's always good when it lands on the CEO's desk, right? So this is on the CEO's desk because they believe that this is a differentiator. What we're going to build them is going to be a differentiator for them in the marketplace, right? Because when they go into IKEA, and I use IKEA because it's an example the client they're trying to get right now. They're going to use this analysis to say, look, we know how to do this better, we know your business better, and we're going to be able to make you more efficient. So again, I bring this up because I really believe that stuff that for the AI stuff isn't just a matter of how cool it is, but it's like how easy it is for the users and how actionable can these insights be. So that's it, guys. Question?
Yeah, I think I'm hearing increased utilization, which ultimately comes back to higher margins.
Yes.
And that's where, definitely where you start looking at, reship costs and stuff along those lines. That's a game changer if they're gonna go to IKEA, because IKEA does really lean logistics. So I'd be curious to see how they're gonna apply that in different entities of the marketplace. And then at the same time is that there's a big play on resiliency on insuring as opposed to offshoring.
Right.
So this definitely can play within the supply chain, and then it goes back, if you want to go one level further, is cash flow and stuff along those lines. So
yeah,
the applications to me seem fairly
And what happens is on all the things that we try to sell our customers or the advantage that we try to give them, right? They're always gonna try to associate it with, well, what am I spending my money on and what's the return on my investment for everything that I'm doing? And clearly when we try to do this and when we show them, when we talk about the sports side, the return on your investment is you're gonna hopefully make better decisions, right? The return on your investment here is you're gonna hopefully make better decisions on how you're getting things done. So if you can show that, you're in a good space.
I have a question about how you're integrating the language models into the large data backends. Are you building out your own language models and then reusing those, or are they each implementation is going to be something like a separate language model that you have? Like how are you really handling that component of it?
Pass
Yeah,
to the more technical.
so on the draft side, it's each one gets their own, right? So
Okay.
like we're working with professional baseball teams, they're not sharing data.
Right,
So
yeah.
each one has their own slice of one large language model. We've got years and years of these data that we've collected. They've got scouting reports back to 1998.
Sure.
Right, where they have, the same grading school, similar schools, different people, but they're able to pull on these things. So yeah, they're 100%, they're each their own instance.
How quickly can you stand those up now? Like, is that becoming something that's very repeatable that you can stand up?
We didn't have a lot of difficulty with it. So we put it into Azure. It was relatively quick, and now we've got a pipeline built to get data going there. So we
Sure.
put data in, it just gets pushed right there.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, guys. So we're gonna open up for discussion, group discussion after, but thank you both. And I'm now gonna bring up a company that's in the business ballpark, Hotel, who is also using AI.
It's a robot dog.
The other thing that